so much for coming in today. So I'm just going to introduce this session because I have co-curated this show with Dr. Amy Orrock. I've known Amy for 10 years. We worked together on an exhibition in Edinburgh in 2007 about Bruegel and Rubens. And it was as the result of a discovery of a painting in our store that looked very much like it could be by Peter Bruegel the Younger himself, that I called Amy up. We'd kept in touch over the past 10 years. I called her up, and then Lena and I said, could Amy come in and have a look at this painting with us? Because we felt that a painting that was installed, that was covered with a grotty yellow varnish, varnish goes really thick and gloopy over time. This painting looked as if it had the potential to be a really exciting Bruegel that had been collected by William Holden in the early 19th century. So we called Amy in, and she got equally excited about it, and that was the catalyst for us sending that painting out to be conserved, for us to do some investigation, scientific analysis of the painting, to prove without a shadow of a doubt that it is a work by Bruegel the Younger. At the same time, there was something that was running through my mind, and it was thanks to you, because I gave a volunteer talk in something like my third week at the Holden, and it was about the Dutch and Flemish paintings in the collection. And while I was giving that talk that evening, and many of you were there, while I was giving that talk, something was snagging in my mind, because I spoke that night about Peter Bruegel the Younger. I spoke about the 2 works at that time that we knew we had in the collection by him. Now we have 3, which makes us the biggest collection of works by him than any other museum in the UK. So I spoke about the 2 works by Peter Bruegel the Younger. I also spoke about David Teniers the Younger, and about 2 works in the collection that we have linked with him. And I spoke about Jan van Kessel. And as I did, I said something quite loose, really, about the fact that they were actually all kind of interconnected. Because David Teniers had married into the Bruegel family. He married Jan Bruegel's daughter. So he was Jan Bruegel the Elder's son-in-law. And Jan van Kessel was Jan Bruegel's grandson. And so they, Jan van Kessel, and Van Kessel, there's that beautiful still life of cheese that's normally in the Posner Gallery, but in a gold frame, and it's a little bit sort of hidden away, part of that didactic display to show how William Holden collected loads and loads and loads of works. But that little still life was so very special. And Jan van Kessel was part of a Bruegel family, and we got these works by Bruegel, and so this germ of an idea, thanks to you and the talk that you attended, started to work together in my mind with this painting in store that we wanted to get conserved. And so Amy and I came up with the idea of doing an exhibition around the Bruegel family. And it's the first time in the UK that an exhibition has treated this story. 150 years, a massive dynasty of painters, all inspired by the father of the dynasty, Peter Bruegel the Elder. And everybody within this network, this family network, had access to the drawings that Peter Bruegel the Elder had made. So they were his legacy. And then the artists are inspired by him as their starting point, but then they also create works that are unique to themselves too. So you have one thing uniting them all, which is what we call the Bruegelian style, a Bruegel-like style, the Bruegelian style, but also then each artist has their own individual take on it. But they have the confidence of all being united as part of this big family tree. And it is a complicated family tree. We've had a lot of fun unravelling the different spellings of the name Bruegel, the different ways that these artists interconnect. Where were they working? Who were they painting for? And hopefully what visitors will really enjoy is the ability to unravel the complexity of this and to understand what these artists were doing while enjoying some of the greatest Flemish paintings that come from the great collections throughout the UK. So this is an exhibition for us to be immensely proud of, and it is our job collectively to encourage every visitor to the museum to go and see it, to give the feeling that it is unmissable, that they must go upstairs, pay their £10, give a £5 donation as well, and go and see this exhibition. And you've probably seen we've had a lot of press about this show. We've had more advanced press than we've ever had before, and that's thanks to our head of communications, Katie Jenkins, who has worked with our PR company to get the message out there 8 months before the show was due to open, so that we had the pre-press about the discovery of the painting. And then that has sort of fed through, so there's been a constant buzz about this show. And that has translated into the highest amount of pre-sale tickets. We've sold 200 tickets already for this show, which we've never done before, and that's people using our online ticketing system. But also that press has been really exciting because it puts the Holborn at the forefront of art historical thinking. It reminds everybody that this is a museum to take really seriously, and we are engaging with an academic discourse. We are saying we are actually taking on old-fashioned ideas of what the Bruegel family stand for. And there is a notion that people are taught when they learn about Bruegel at university that Bruegel the Elder is the only artist that matters. That everybody else, they're just copiers, they're just followers, they're copying, and therefore the works that they make are of equal value. In fact, Jonathan Jones has written an article yesterday in The Guardian where he says this, and he's saying, oh, the Holborn are doing this show, and why are they bothering? They're just flouting a copyist. Jonathan Jones has not been here to see the exhibition, so we will be inviting him to come and see the exhibition. Because you cannot doubt it when you see these works, they are magnificent. And what we're doing is so cutting edge. It's brilliant that Jonathan Jones is writing about this, because we're taking on a debate. And here we are leaders at this museum of challenging old-fashioned ideas and putting new spotlights on a whole dynasty of family of dynasty of painters. To be able to say, what does each individual artist mean, and how do they interconnect, and what works are they creating? And the results are beautiful. We also had a double-page spread in the Times on Saturday. If you Google Nancy Durrant is the journalist who wrote that. The double page in the Times, fabulous. I didn't notice the National Gallery having a double page in the Times on Saturday. It's really, really exciting. So we can be really proud of this show. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing Amy talk about the main themes. So she's going to walk us through the themes of the exhibition. And there are certain things that you'll notice we've done slightly differently. Each exhibition, we reinvent the space upstairs. So for this show, we wanted to divide up the whole exhibition into 4 sections, and we worked with a designer called Stephen Greenberg. He works at Metaphor. We haven't worked with Metaphor since 2011, when Stephen designed the ceramic vases hanging from the ceiling and the reinvention of the Holborn for our reopening. So it seemed like the right time to bring him back. And I think you're going to love the design he's made for the walls, because it's a way of having solid walls for the different sections, but with a beautiful structure above and below which allows you to see through spaces with a design that evokes a window. It actually evokes a window from one of the paintings, the tax collectors, which Amy's going to show you in a moment. Then when you're in the exhibition space, you'll see what we mean, but the shape of it comes from that. And the first wall of the exhibition, the colour is a flash of orange, because the one thing that each member of the Bruegel family knew was that if you're telling a story in paint, use your colours to draw the viewer's eye around the painting. And the great Bruegel paintings use orange to tell a story. So when you look at the first major painting in the exhibition, which is an Adoration of the Kings from the National Gallery, you'll see 2 flushes of orange that draw your eye around the painting. When you look at our wonderful wedding dance in the open air, the Holborn Museum's own Peter Bruegel the Younger, you'll see orange all the way around the painting. And it's the way that the artist actually draws you around and creates an energy within the scene. So we start the exhibition with a flash of orange with an orange wall, and then the rest of the colours are a dark grey and a light grey, because they're sort of earthy tones which reflect and are inspired by the colours that are used by the Bruegel dynasty. So I'm going to hand over to Amy, who's going to tell us some more.
Thank you, Jenny. Hello, everybody. I'm going to whiz through today the main themes of the exhibition and take you on a whistle-stop tour of all the pictures. But please feel free at the end to ask any questions. It's quite a lot to take in, so we're going to whiz through, and hopefully you'll leave with a love of Bruegel that's as strong as mine. So here we are at the opening section of the exhibition. As Jenny said, we've used this flash of orange, which is a very Bruegelian colour, and we're starting with a bit of an introductory text, and then the key thing, the family tree, which is what we return to throughout the exhibition. And it really is all about this whole family. We're focusing on 4 different generations and 150 years. And the key artists, I'll just go forward to a slightly more readable family tree for you now. And the key artist that everyone's probably heard of already is this Bruegel the Elder. So he's probably the most famous Bruegel, but he had 2 sons, Peter Bruegel the Younger and Jan Bruegel the Elder. and they're also very well represented in this exhibition, and the Holborn works are all by Peter Bruegel the Younger. Here. What's really interesting about the Dynasty is that the boys lost their father when they were very young. So Peter Bruegel the Elder died in his 40s, and his sons were about 1 and 4 at that time. So there's no way that he could have taught his sons in the kind of conventional workshop way that we might imagine. They were actually probably taught to paint by their grandmother, this lady right at the top, Macon Verhulst. And she was a miniaturist. She lived to around 80 years old, and quite a formidable figure, we think, and probably took the sons under her wing and instructed them in the art of painting. They also would have had access to their father's drawings, probably, his kind of compositional drawings, but not to his paintings, because by the time that he died, his paintings were all in the kind of highest echelons, collected by people like Rudolf II of Prague, or all the different Habsburg rulers. So the sons wouldn't really have seen his paintings, but they would have relied on his drawings and their grandmother's sort of knowledge to help them follow his model. But they were also continually innovating. So that's another thing that we found throughout putting this show together, is that the Bruegels were just always inventing. So the peasant scene didn't really exist before Peter Bruegel the Elder painted it. Flower pieces, still lifes of flowers, didn't really exist before Jan Bruegel the Elder started painting it. And then these artists, Jan van Kessel and David Teniers the Younger, a bit later in the family tree, also bring their own creations and slants to the Dynasty. So we'll just start off by looking at the first section of the exhibition, is Bruegel Inventor. So this is really looking at the father of the Dynasty. After that, we move on to look at themes that are kind of flow throughout all the different artists. So this is a really major work that you see when you first walk in, and it's brilliant that we've been able to get this on loan from the National Gallery. It's Bruegel the Elder's Adoration of the Kings. Probably a familiar scene, a nativity scene, but there's something about this nativity that's very unsettling. It's not your kind of normal sort of happy occasion. It's really quite disturbing, and Bruegel's bringing something very new here. It hasn't been lent from the National Gallery since 1902, so it's a real coup that we could get it here. And it really kicks off the exhibition in style, because it's a great way in to trying to understand what it is that makes the Bruegelian style so different. And we've hung it next to this work by Bruegel's teacher, Peter Koch van Elst, who was Macon, if you remember the grandma, it was her husband. And we can see that Koch van Elst's nativity scene is much more conventional compared to Bruegel's scene. He's set this kind of classical ruin, which is a traditional way to show the nativity scene. Bruegel set it unequivocally in a kind of stable, a rustic stable. And then the figures themselves in Bruegel's painting, they look like real people that you'd see in the Netherlands walking around. They're not idealised. The kings look quite sort of old and tired. Their costumes are a bit shabby. This king looks like he's kind of made his crown himself by tying a banner around his head. And then if we look back to Koch van Elst's kings, they're very much more idealised, kind of Italianate models. He's got this kind of muscular thigh coming down. So they're really quite different to Bruegel's sort of wizened-looking old men. And perhaps the biggest difference you can see is in the Christ child himself. Koch van Elst's Christ child looks, quite happily putting out his arms, whereas Bruegel's child is shying away from all this attention, and he's almost anticipating his future fate, his crucifixion, and the armies that are just sort of arriving in the distance in Koch van Elst's nativity. By the time we get to Bruegel's one, they're pressing right in on the scene. There's no sky left. They're kind of filling the whole scene, and their faces are caricatured. They look like really kind of, some of them look really mean and sort of nasty characters, and they're all bearing down on this little child. So what we've got with Bruegel is a kind of a real interest in the everyday and the local people. And that carries on through his sons as well. We've also got in the exhibition from Bruegel the Elder a print. So this is the design for the print. So we've got this in the exhibition, an original drawing, and the print that was made from it. And Bruegel's prints were really important for his followers to use as well, kind of disseminating his imagery out. And this print's a typical kind of Bruegelian, slightly archaic subject, but we're looking at a figure that's described as elk, which translates as everyman. And he's trying to find an answer. He's looking for something in all this baggage of worldly goods. He's got glasses on and he's got a lantern, but he still can't see. He can't find what he's looking for. And all around him, people are also hunting through all these kind of worldly goods and not getting the answer they want. And then instead they're fighting. You can see at the top corner, two people pulling over a piece of material. And we think that this has a moralistic kind of overtone. The text at the bottom is in Latin, and it translates as, "No one does not seek his advantage everywhere. No one does not seek himself in all that he does. No one does not look everywhere for private gain. This one pulls, that one pulls. All have the same love of possession." So he's kind of taking a sort of satirical look at this desire that was present in Antwerp at the time for worldly goods, and saying that this wasn't the way that we should be. And this idea is explored in the next section of the exhibition, which we call Morals and Lessons, but it's looking at daily life and proverbs and the lessons that the dynasty were trying to show us from our everyday behaviour. And a great painting to begin with here is this very bizarre collection of proverbs. So it's after a painting by Bruegel the Elder called Netherlandish Proverbs. This was painted in Antwerp at the beginning of the 17th century. So it's a close copy of the original, which is in Berlin. And it's about 90 different proverbs are being acted out in this village. The people acting out the proverbs seem to have no idea that they're surrounded by other people also acting out proverbs. So they're all kind of carrying on their individual foolishness without any kind of self-awareness or interest in each other. And we think that this type of painting would have been enjoyed by the Antwerp merchants, who would have had it hanging on the walls, and then when they had their dinner parties, they would have had a lively debate about what was going on and really enjoyed spotting and trying to decode the different proverbs. And we hope that people who come to the exhibition will similarly be kind of stuck in front of it, trying to decipher what's going on and maybe having debates about, well, do you think he's behaving as he should be? Or no, I think this one's being naughty here, or whatever. You know, there's so much going on in this painting. Proverbs were a real passion at the time, and Erasmus was kind of publishing collections of proverbs, over 4,000 proverbs Erasmus collected together, so really 90 isn't that many in that context. But there was this idea that if you collect together these proverbs, they might give you some wisdom. And I'll just go through some details, and we can see some that you might recognise still today. We've got a man that's fallen between two stools, another one crying over his spilt porridge, and kind of like crying over spilt milk. This central man is banging his head against a brick wall. This man is filling in the well after the calf is drowned, so taking action too late, shutting the stable door after the horse is bolted, that kind of thing. And this man's casting roses before swine. And right at the top, here, three men are acting out the biblical parable, if the blind lead the blind, they'll fall into a ditch. And that is explored in another work in the exhibition. This is again a follower of Bruegel, but based on a painting by Bruegel the Elder now in Naples. And we can see it's quite a sombre painting. These 6 blind men, they're beggars, we can tell they're poor. This man's got a hurdy-gurdy, which was an instrument that beggars played. And this man's got his begging bowl around his waist. And they're very poor, they're stumbling forward, they don't know where they're going, they're tumbling forward into this ditch. And it seems that the church in the background isn't offering them any hope of redemption. This man's even got a crucifix on. But even their faith isn't helping them. And this has been massively influential, this painting in the history of art. If you know Sargent's painting Gast in the Imperial War Museum, it references this work. So it's great to have these kind of iconic works by represented in the exhibition. This is a painting that we've got from the Barber, and we think this is probably quite a few proverbs going on in this painting, but none have been definitively identified. They certainly look like they're up to no good, these two. It's called peasants binding faggots, which is the term for these kind of small bits of kindling. But they look like they're almost could be stealing the wood that the man up the tree is cutting down. And there seems to be some kind of comedic balance between one of them being very fat and one of them being very lean, which was a sort of common comedy kind of pairing. They certainly look quite untrustworthy, but it's up to you to decide what that proverb might be. Maybe we'll get some suggestions from visitors to the exhibition. You'll all be familiar with this work, Robbing the Bird's Nest. Again, another painting which focuses on a proverb. There are actually several different proverbs that fit this painting as well. The first one might be that the man up the tree robbing the nest is at fault. There was a proverb, a fool may tumble painfully who climbs for nests upon a tree. But there's another proverb around at the same time which says, he who knows where the nest is has the knowledge, he who robs it has the nest. So maybe the man in the foreground is at fault for not acting on this knowledge of where the nest is. And certainly in a painting by Bruegel the Elder in Vienna, which is a much bigger version of this composition, there's a river in the foreground here. And so the peasant who's smugly pointing up at the fault of his fellow man is actually about to fall into the river himself. So this idea that pride comes before a fall. And you'll see again and again in Bruegel all these kind of jokes, sort of references played out. So we can look at the paintings and debate them and talk about what's going on in them. This is a bit more of a straightforward scene. It's very nostalgic scene, looking back to kind of earlier imagery of labours that would be appropriate to the seasons. And here they are doing springtime activities. So we've got a lot of gardening in this lovely kind of courtly garden, and then sheep shearing, and then in the very, very background a kind of springtime dance going on. And this is painted by Peter Bruegel the Younger. So we're moving on to the next sort of Bruegel in the family tree now. And it's based on a print by his father, which is there. But we can see that Bruegel the Younger has introduced lovely tulips to the garden. So he's addressing this new thing in the 17th century, an interest in tulips and rare flowers, and putting them into images that are loosely based on his father's kind of compositions. And interestingly, this painting has come to us from Kelmscott Manor, which is the former home of William Morris. And we know that it was acquired by Rossetti, Morris's friend, who then took it to Kelmscott, and it was enjoyed by William Morris and his daughter May Morris. It's really interesting, I think, to think about this kind of pre-Raphaelite ideas about collective, living together and farming and growing flowers and interesting design. And it's all kind of contained in this Bruegel image. So we can see, again, the Bruegels influencing artists throughout the century. Oh, this is my slide that hasn't really come out. This is supposed to show you, this is a shot of the interior of the exhibition, which has got, we've gone for these kind of floating walls that are suspended, that are on kind of framework, and it very much mimics the window that you can see here in the tax collector's office. So this is a really cluttered Bruegelian interior with lots to see. There's kind of screwed up paper all over the floor, and the subject of ridicule is this kind of horrible looking man, tax collector at the top here, and the peasants all nervously queuing up with their offerings of chicken and eggs and hoping that they'll get granted some time with this official. On the right here, and that's been verified as David 10 years the Younger, so we're very excited to be on display. The next section deals with what you might think of as the classic kind of Bruegel, a bit more fun. We've got the feasts and festivals, but the first work that really dominates this one is the procession to Calvary. Now this is a really exciting loan that we've got in from the National Trust. It's normally on display in Nostell Priory in Yorkshire, and it's come down to us. It was recently saved in a big public funding campaign. So you might have seen it at the National Gallery. It was on loan there in 2010. But it's a huge work. It really sort of dominates that room. And again, a really typical Bruegelian scene, so full of incidents. We've got the kind of procession starting down here, Christ in the middle, carrying his cross, all the soldiers kind of leading up to the mound where he's going to be crucified. And the two thieves that are going to be crucified beside him are in the cart here. But it's about so much more than just that religious story. There's all sorts of other local life going on around, and it's really interesting to kind of get up close. And we've loved having this one in the show while we've been installing it, because every day we've seen new details and new things to look at. I've just zoomed in on some of those details here for you so you can get a flavour. Here's Christ, and the lady in the colourful dress is Veronica. She's coming to wipe his face. So she's showing him some charity. the Marys at the side, kind of traditional mourners of Christ, and they're being kind of done in quite an old-fashioned style, so almost sort of looking back to past Netherlandish models, Roger van der Weyden, kind of very stylised, elongated figures here. But a lot of the crowd are just kind of ordinary people that you can imagine you would encounter in Antwerp at the time. People begging for money. He's got a leper here coming out of the thatched house, and he's got his clappers to warn people that he's a leper. And beggars, again, similar to the blind leading the blind, seeking some charity. Scope, that painting. So then we get on in the Feast and Festival section to our own wedding dance in the open air, which you might not recognise from this picture of it. This is how it looked in the store 2 years ago. And we were really excited to get it conserved. It took about 9 months. We removed lots of the discoloured varnish. And there we can see the result side by side. So you can see the sky is particularly so much lighter in the conserved version. But all the detail, like the foliage of the trees, there's a little bird up on the roof flying past the thatched roof of the building, and all the colours just now sing out at us. And it's a really, really wonderful painting. I'll just read, this is a quote from Karel van Mander, and it's actually about Bruegel the Elder, but it's very pertinent to this painting. And this is an artist who was writing at the same time that Bruegel was painting. Bruegel often went out of town among the peasants with this Frankert to fun fairs and weddings, dressed in peasants' costume, and they gave presents, just like the others, pretending to be acquaintances or family of the bride and bridegroom. Here Bruegel entertained himself by observing the nature of the peasants in eating, drinking, dancing, leaping, love-making, and other amusements, which he then most animatedly and subtly imitated with paint. You get this feeling of Bruegel really sitting and observing all the customs, and they're really accurately rendered here. The bride is actually sitting down at the back at the table here. She's got a traditional square-necked wedding dress, a black wedding dress, which was what was worn at the time, and she's getting gifts from the other people at the wedding. She's got a kind of platter in front of her with coins. But all around her, the guests are having a great time, enjoying themselves. They're dancing, they're kissing. There's a man up at the top weeing against the house. So it's quite a raucous kind of party that's taking place. And only the bagpipers are looking a bit bored as they kind of have to play another song for everyone to dance to. It's possible that the bride might be pregnant as well. So there's an engraving that was produced just before this painting, where it says the bride, you can see up there, is described as being full and sweet. So in other words, pregnant, and she can't stand up to dance. So there's some humour going on in these. Other areas of the painting, he leaves quite loose, like you can see the foliage in the background, the trees, and these are just a couple of lines, because he knows what he's doing there, but he wants to get the figures in the dance exactly right, because he knew that these would sell. There are 32 versions of this painting in existence, all by his hand, we think. There are over 100 that are not by his hand, but he was churning out these works to a merchant market that were buying them avidly, and he knew his market really well, and he knew that this would be a popular composition. So we're really excited that this is the only work of the version of this composition in a UK collection now. So. Sorry, I just have to wait for a second for my slides. My images are quite big and it takes a little while for my PowerPoint to go through. So we've got it here, and it's displayed in the exhibition actually, next to the Visit to a Farmhouse, another work from the Holbens collection, which you'll know was restored quite recently. And there's no evidence that they were made as a pair. In fact, they're probably made separately, because we know that the wedding dance was such a popular composition in its own right. But they make a nice pair here, and they were probably acquired by William Holben early in the 19th century as a pair. So we put them back together here. Also next to the wedding dance is this village festival by Jan Bruegel the Elder. So this is Bruegel's other son. So we've got Peter, what is one sort of side of the family, who's very much staying in the peasant tradition. Jan is following his father's traditions, but he's taking them in a slightly different direction. he likes to work on copper. So this is actually painted on a really thin copper sheet. And this gave his paintings of their distinctive kind of luminosity. The colour can really shine through. It doesn't sink in the way that it might sink into wood or canvas. It sits on the surface, and they're just alive with detail. We've got all the same kind of Bruegelian characters. We've got some children playing games here, the following of fools here, and the wedding dance and the bagpipers. But Jan also puts in a really exquisite kind of winding vista going away there to sort of misty mountains. And we know that he travelled a lot. He travelled to Italy and also collaborated with lots of other artists, people like Rubens. So he was moving in slightly different circles to his brother, and you can see that kind of reflected in his art. His nickname at the time was Velvet Bruegel, and that's the title that we've used for the last section of the exhibition. We're not focusing just on Jan Bruegel the Elder here, but we're looking at this idea of the kind of velvety, exquisitely rendered cabinet type of painting. The painting by Jan the Elder, next to this painting by Jan the Younger, and then we've got by Abraham Bruegel, who is the grandson. So we've got 3 generations of flower paintings. And again, I think you can see a real evolution in the style here. He's got the confidence of coming from the Bruegel dynasty, and knowing that he's, been taught by some of the most creative and inventive and talented flower painters in history. He's bringing something new. We're looking forward to the 18th century here. It looks much more modern, doesn't it? And we've got this kind of shaft of dramatic light, and the flowers are all kind of overblown. They're kind of past their best, but it's wonderfully rich. And then got drops of water on the vase and on the ledge. So instead of comparing it with jewels, he's almost just saying, well, the flowers are exquisite enough. I don't need to put jewels in my painting as well. This is an interesting flower garland that we found down in the museum stores at the same time as the other Bruegelian works. And we thought, well, Jan Bruegel was famous for painting flower garlands. Yes, let's have a look at this. So we took it to the conservation studio. And this is what they found when they cleaned it up. This curious face in the middle. But as you can tell, it hasn't always been like this. This face has been inserted at some point. So the original centre of the garland, which will probably have been a virgin and child or something like that, has been cut out. And then suddenly another painting stuck in the middle. And there's even another strip of canvas here at the bottom. So there's actually 3 different sort of bits of canvas here that have then been joined together. And we don't know why someone would do this. I mean, the flowers are absolutely beautiful. You can see in the restored version here, zoomed in on the details of the flowers. But we thought it was an interesting work because it kind of shows the longevity of these lovely floral garlands, that people still wanted them around and in their houses, even if they wanted to change what they surrounded. This is a work, again, by Jan Bruegel the Elder, and we wanted to highlight his collaborations. He was very famous for collaborating with Rubens. They worked on about 24 different paintings together, but he also collaborated with Hans Rottenhammer, which is here. There's about 9 works that they collaborated on. So he was always kind of innovating and going out and meeting other artists. Jan Bruegel the Elder usually painted the background in these scenes, so we can see again the kind of really sort of classic Bruegelian foliage of the trees. And then his partner would paint in the figures. And it's not that Jan couldn't paint figures. We've seen he's a very skilled painter, but it was that at the time in Antwerp, these collaborations had much more value. So if you had a painting by Rubens, that was good. If you had a painting by Rubens and Jan Bruegel, that was even better. That was kind of the most valuable painting you could have. And these, again, are all done on copper, which was a great support for collaboration because it could easily be passed between studios. It was light, it was fairly tough. And there was no kind of time delay. You could give it, wait a month, fill in the figures when you had the time, give it back. So it's really interesting to include one of these works. Another genre that Jan Bruegel pioneered was the paradise landscape, which he kind of started off. It didn't really exist until the Bruegel started painting it. And we can see the sort of idea here. It's loosely based on a biblical story. So we've got Noah's Ark, just visible here, and the animals are being gathered together and herded into the ark. But the biblical background is really just a kind of a loose framework for showing this catalogue of animals. And just as the Archdukes, Albert and Isabella, had a lovely botanical garden, they also had a zoo and a menagerie full of exotic animals. And again, we know that Jan Bruegel was going and sketching them from life. His sketchbooks are full of drawings of ostriches and monkeys, other things he was getting from other places. So this horse and the lions are a quote from Rubens, again, whose studio he was visiting. So they're really kind of interesting encyclopedic kind of works looking at the natural world. But what I think is interesting about this painting is that, unlike the Proverbs, where everyone's kind of carrying on their separate proverbs in different sections, in these paradise landscapes, the animals actually seem quite aware of each other, bizarrely. So we've got the goat looking quite worried across at the leopards. These dogs are barking at the very rare blue bird. And then the wildcats are up the tree trying to catch all of these exotic parrots. So there's a lot of fun in these paintings as well. The final section here, we're looking at cabinet pictures, and you might remember these are from the Holbeins collection, the Circle of Roland Savary, who was like Jan Bruegel, working in Antwerp on paradise landscapes. And again, we can see the ark in this one, and the kind of catalogue of exotic creatures. All painted in a small scale on copper, as was this still life with cheese. And these are other kind of classic works by Jan van Kessel. And we're looking now at Jan Bruegel's grandson, Jan van Kessel, who's extracted the kind of bugs and butterflies that you find in the flower pieces and given them their own kind of focus here. And it's no coincidence that these were painted at around the same time that the microscope was invented in the Netherlands. It's that idea of looking closely at things and finding, real interest in this microscopic world, and real beauty as well. And these were cabinet paintings, so they would probably have originally been drawer fronts of a kind of a Wunderkammer or a curiosity cabinet, such as this one. This is a picture from the V&A. This is not in the exhibition, but we've included this just to illustrate the kind of context that they would have been understood. In the exhibition, we've tried to evoke this cabinet with the hang of these cabinet pictures. So we're thinking about the fact that these would have been drawers that you could then pull open, and inside the drawer you might have a specimen of a real butterfly or an exotic shell or a lovely piece of jewellery, and you come and you bring your friends around and go through your cabinet and you sort of gaze in wonder together at the contents. So all throughout the dynasty we've got this interest in looking closely at the world. We've got Bruegel the Elder, as Carol van Mander says, out watching the peasants dancing, recording their customs. And then we've got Bruegel the Younger, also looking closely at the peasants and recording the customs in paintings like the wedding dance. Jan Bruegel the Elder, looking closely at flowers and rare creatures. And then Jan van Kessel, looking really at these tiny, tiny detailed studies of insects. And that's one thing that also defines the dynasty, as well as this innovation, is this attention to detail and close looking. And it results in really magical pictures, which I hope you all enjoy. I've just included at the end here, this is when you come round back to the start of the exhibition and you just get a shot down to the Adoration of the Kings by Bruegel the Elder. And hopefully you'll see that we've kind of come full circle, and you could go round again and explore again the themes with all those different ideas and artists in your head as you look round at this kind of spread of themes throughout the exhibition. Thank you.
Why I invited Dr. Amy Orrock to come and curate the show for us at the Holbein. Isn't she fantastic? And it's just a show we can be so proud of collectively. I'm really looking forward to welcoming visitors here. And I hope you feel enthused about it, and I hope you enjoy spending some time with these works. One thing people might ask you about is why we don't have an audio guide for this exhibition, because we don't. We just have labels and this fabulous book. And the thing, don't tell visitors this, but just so you know, an audio guide costs £5,000 to make. So you have a decision when you're putting on an exhibition, what type of interpretation do you do? And throughout last year, we did smaller versions of exhibition catalogues, and they sold really well and they were really attractive. And we had those designed by a local designer in Bath and printed ourselves in Bath. Whereas for this show, because it's got so much new research, we wanted to do a more commercial publication, so we got Philip Lawson Publishers to make this publication for us. So this means that this is global. This is in all the bookshops throughout the world. It's available on Amazon. And so it's another way of getting the word out about the show. And so in order to do a more expensive publication like this, we couldn't afford to do a media guide. But if people ask about that, please just encourage them to buy the book. And within the book, there are details such as in the Netherlandish proverbs, which Amy went through, and then calling between tools and things. Amy, for the first time, for this painting from Nuffield College in Oxford, has done a key to the painting. For the first time ever, all the proverbs, there's nearly 90 of them, have been identified by Amy with modern day translations of what that means to us in English as well. So that's something to encourage people to buy the book. It's $16.95 the book. It's a beautiful publication. So I really hope people will buy it. So if they ask about an audio guide, encourage them instead to buy the book. And they might like to take the book around with them as they go around the exhibition as well. Otherwise, it's a really good souvenir to buy afterwards. So it's a cracking show. We're so excited yet again. We've done it again at the Holden, haven't we? So I hope you'll enjoy it. But just to end, we wanted to say thank you to you, because we couldn't do what we do without you. You are unbelievable. Some of you were here last night. We were able to keep the whole museum open last night for our private view guests, because so many of you volunteered to be here for that. You mean the world to us. Thank you so much for your support of this great museum. And particularly now, we're ramping it up, asking for more donations, explaining more about our work, because it is vital we keep this museum going, so that we can put on exhibitions of the highest quality, as good as any museum in the world, the things that we're doing here at this museum. And we should all be proud of that together, because it's by working together that we make it. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy seeing the exhibition now. Thank you once again, Amy. Well done. Thank you.